Why is it that the older and wiser you become, the less seriously you're taken in a doctor's office? You've spent your whole life caring for others, raising children, holding families together, showing up day after day. But now when something feels off in your own body, you're met with rush visits, vague answers, or worse, dismissal. It's not because you're imagining things. It's because certain questions often asked with good intentions are quietly working against you. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 6 common questions many women over 65 ask during medical appointments that actually make doctors take them less seriously. But more importantly, I'll show you how to reframe these questions so you get the clear answers, respect, and care you deserve. You've waited long enough to be heard. Stay with me because by the end of this video, you'll have the tools to speak with confidence and finally feel like your voice matters in the exam room. Before we dive in, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from and what time is it right now? Drop a comment below. Even if it's just an ordinary moment in your day, I truly appreciate you being here. And if this feels helpful, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss what's coming next. Should I be concerned about this at my age? There's a quiet question I've heard many times from women in their 60s, 70s, even 80s sitting on the edge of an exam table. It's not loud or demanding. It often comes with a small shrug, a gentle voice, sometimes a nervous laugh. And it sounds like this: should I even bother with this at my age? Now I want to pause here because if you've ever said those words or even just thought them, I want you to know something very clearly. That question doesn't come from weakness. It comes from decades of putting others first. From raising children without complaint, from showing up at work tired and still doing your best, from making meals, wiping tears, driving loved ones to their appointments while skipping your own. It comes from a lifetime of giving. But here's the truth no one tells you. After 60, society often stops giving back. And somewhere along the way, you start believing it's your turn to shrink, to stay quiet in the doctor's office, to settle for it's just aging, to think maybe you don't need as much help as you once gave to everyone else. But that belief, this idea that you shouldn't bother, it's not just untrue, it's dangerous. Because when you say that to a doctor, even a kind one, it sends a message louder than you think. It says, I'm not here to fight for the best care. Just give me the basics. And doctors, like all humans, are busy. They're trained to prioritize. And if they hear you say, I'm fine just coasting, they may stop thinking long term. They may stop offering options that could actually improve your strength, your energy, your joy for the next 10, even 20 years. That's how health becomes maintenance, not growth. Survival, not living. But let me ask you something. If you didn't care, would you have brought it up at all? Of course not. You ask because something inside you wants better, because you're still here. And still here means you still matter. So instead of asking, should I even bother, try asking this: what's the best way for me to stay healthy, independent, and full of life in the next decade? Now that question changes everything. It says, I'm not giving up. I'm planning. I'm investing in myself. And that's a signal every doctor pays attention to. Because from a medical perspective, your body doesn't suddenly stop responding to care at 65 or 70 or even 85. The biology of healing still works. Muscles can still rebuild. Bones can still strengthen. The brain can still form new pathways. It just takes more intention and better communication. Let me give you a real example. A woman in Michigan I worked with, age 74, came in with hip pain and told me it's probably just age. I'll live with it. But when I asked what mattered most to her, she said, I want to keep walking on the beach with my grandkids in Florida. That one sentence changed everything. Instead of offering pain meds and sending her home, we created a care plan that included physical therapy, a bone scan, a vitamin D check, and joint-friendly exercise. 6 months later, she wasn't just walking, she was dancing at her granddaughter's wedding. This isn't a miracle. It's what happens when care meets clarity and when the patient knows she still has a future worth fighting for. And you do. Now, I know the American healthcare system isn't perfect. Appointments are short, insurance is confusing, and doctors aren't always trained to listen as well as they should. But that's exactly why your voice is needed more than ever. You are not invisible, you are not optional, and you are absolutely not done. So the next time you're in an exam room, take a breath, sit up tall, and instead of wondering if you're worth the effort, remind yourself that the best years of your life don't have to be behind you. There is still time to build strength, to reduce pain, to sleep better, to feel joy again, not just survive each day, but love it. Your value is not measured by age, it's measured by presence. And if you are here, breathing, listening, and learning, then you are already proving that you matter. So please don't ask, should I bother? Ask, how do I live well starting now? And keep asking until you get an answer that honors the life you've lived and the years still ahead. Is this normal at my age? You've probably said it at least once. Maybe even last week, sitting in that chilly exam room with the paper gown rustling under you. You feel a strange ache in your hip, or your energy's been dipping lately, or your memory seems just a bit foggier than usual. So you ask your doctor gently, almost apologetically, is this just normal for someone my age? It sounds like a reasonable question, a modest one, maybe even practical. But here's what most people don't realize, that simple question can quietly close a very important door. Because when you ask if something is just normal, you're giving your doctor permission to stop looking, to stop asking, to stop digging. And sometimes what gets missed matters more than you think. Let's pause for a moment and really sit with that. Because in American healthcare, where appointments often last 15 minutes or less, doctors are trained to triage quickly. They listen for urgency, for red flags, for signs that someone needs immediate attention. But when a calm, thoughtful woman over 65 says, maybe it's just aging, most doctors, whether they mean to or not, file it away as low priority. It's not because they don't care. It's because they've been conditioned to believe that aging itself is a diagnosis, that a little pain, a little fatigue, a little forgetfulness is simply part of getting older. But here's the truth. Aging is not the same as disease, and not every symptom is just a normal part of growing older. In fact, many symptoms that get brushed off as aging can be early warnings of something more serious and more treatable. Let me give you an example. Fatigue, a tiredness that lingers no matter how much you rest. For years it was chalked up to aging, but science tells a different story. Fatigue could be the first sign of heart disease, especially in women. It could mean your red blood cells are too low, something called anemia. Or it could point to blood sugar issues like prediabetes or even undiagnosed diabetes. And then there's joint pain. That stiff knee or aching wrist that shows up every morning. Sure, some of it may be arthritis, which does become more common with age, but it could also be rheumatoid arthritis, an autoimmune condition that causes progressive damage if left untreated. Or it could be inflammation linked to diet, circulation problems, or even certain medications. And memory lapses. Yes, we all forget where we left our keys from time to time. But if you notice it's getting harder to follow conversations or remember names or stay focused on what you're reading, that's not something to shrug off. Because while it might be mild cognitive decline, it could also be vitamin B12 deficiency, thyroid imbalance, or even the side effects of medications commonly prescribed to seniors in the US. What I want you to hear is this. Your body still speaks to you. And when something doesn't feel quite right, that feeling deserves attention, not dismissal. It's easy to doubt yourself, especially in a culture that too often makes older adults feel invisible. In America, youth is glorified while age is quietly pushed aside. Older women in particular carry this weight. You're told to be graceful about decline. To age well often means stay quiet, don't complain, don't take up too much time. But your concerns are not complaints, and your symptoms are not an inconvenience. They are data, clues, signs that something in your system may need care support or simply a closer look. So instead of asking, Is this normal for my age? Try this. I'm concerned about this change. I want to make sure it's not something serious, and I'd like to stay ahead of it. That one sentence shifts the conversation entirely. It keeps your doctor in detective mode, not autopilot. It tells them you are paying attention to your body and you expect them to do the same. It also sends a quiet message that you value your health, your time, and your future. Because here's the hopeful part. When you speak up early, there's often more that can be done. Early intervention means less invasive treatment, less time lost, less suffering. It means catching that blood pressure issue before it becomes a stroke, that vitamin deficiency before it turns into nerve damage, that slow-growing condition before it becomes life-altering. You are not too old to ask questions. You are not too old to be taken seriously. And you are definitely not too old to expect answers that respect your intelligence, your experience, and your right to live well. So the next time something feels off, even just a little, don't second guess it. I don't want to be a burden. There's a quiet sentence I hear far too often in doctors' offices across America. It doesn't come from weakness or from confusion. It comes from love. It comes from women, mothers, grandmothers, caregivers who've spent their whole lives giving everything they had to someone else. They sit down ready to talk about a concern, maybe dizziness, pain, or a reaction to medication, but before they can finish, they say softly, "I don't want to be a burden." Now, if you've ever said that or even felt it in your chest, I want you to hear this. You are not a burden. You are a person who deserves care. Still, I understand why you feel that way. Here in the U.S., especially for older women, there's an unspoken pressure to stay quiet, to stay low maintenance, to not make a fuss. After decades of being the strong one, the one who showed up, cooked dinner, made appointments, stayed up late caring for others, it feels almost selfish to ask for help. But here's the problem with that mindset. When you downplay your needs, the system listens. If you act like your time doesn't matter, your appointment gets rushed. If you act like your questions are an inconvenience, they get skipped. And if you act like your symptoms aren't serious, they might be ignored altogether. You get the bare minimum 5 minutes of prescription and a quick goodbye. Now let's pause here and think about that, because this isn't just about healthcare. It's about how you see yourself. Somewhere along the way, many women in America start to believe that aging means becoming invisible, that if your body starts to falter, the kind thing to do is not to speak up, but to quietly adjust, to adapt, to endure. But here's the science you need to know. When symptoms are addressed early, your chance of recovery increases significantly. When pain is managed properly, your quality of life, not just your lifespan, goes up. When medications are reviewed thoroughly, dangerous side effects can be avoided entirely. And when your doctor truly understands what's going on with you, not just what shows up in the blood work, but how you feel the care you receive is safer, smarter, and more effective. So what's the alternative to "I don't want to be a burden"? Try saying this instead: "I'm committed to staying independent and healthy, so I want to fully understand what's happening." Now you've reframed the whole conversation. You're not asking for sympathy, you're asking for partnership. You're not saying, "Take care of me because I'm falling apart." You're saying, "Help me stay strong so I don't fall apart later." And that message resonates. Doctors respond differently to patients who are clear, proactive, and focused on long-term health. You're not just another name on the schedule. You're someone with goals, someone with a future worth protecting. Think of it like this. If your car was making a strange noise, would you hesitate to ask the mechanic to take a look? If your roof was leaking in the middle of a Michigan winter, would you wait until it collapsed before calling someone? Your body deserves at least as much attention as your house or your car. It's your vehicle for life, and it deserves tune-ups, check-ins, and care, especially when something doesn't feel right. And if you're worried that asking for help makes you weak, let me remind you of something very American. This country was built on people who dared to speak up. From the streets of Philadelphia to the fields of Iowa, progress happened because people didn't stay silent. Your health is no different. It needs your voice, your questions, your presence. Because being independent doesn't mean doing everything alone. It means knowing when to ask for the support that keeps you strong. Now, I know sometimes it's not easy. Maybe your kids are busy with their own lives. Maybe your partner's gone. Maybe you live in a small town in Nebraska or a big city like Los Angeles where the system feels too big to navigate. But you are still the captain of your ship. And the more clearly you advocate for yourself, the smoother the waters become. So please, the next time you're tempted to say, I don't want to be a burden, stop. Take a breath, remember your worth, and ask the questions that protect your independence, not out of guilt, but out of wisdom. Because the truth is, taking care of yourself today is one of the greatest gifts you can give to the people who love you tomorrow. If you were a doctor, what would you do? It's a question many of us have asked often when we're tired, overwhelmed, or unsure what choice to make next. You're sitting in a quiet exam room looking at your doctor across the desk. You've just been told you need to decide about a medication, a surgery, a treatment plan, and then almost instinctively you ask, if you were me, what would you do? Now, I understand why that feels like the right thing to say. It feels wise, humble, respectful. You're trying to tap into their knowledge to make a safe choice. But here's what most people don't realize. That question, while well-meaning, quietly takes your voice out of the decision-making process. It hands over the steering wheel to someone who hasn't lived your life. Because when you ask a doctor what they would do, the answer you get is shaped by their age, their values, and their risk tolerance. If your doctor is 38 years old, runs marathons, and doesn't take any medications, their answer might be very different from what works for you at 72 with arthritis and a long history of caring for others before yourself. Even among experienced physicians, personal beliefs matter. Some doctors prefer aggressive treatment. Others lean toward minimal intervention. Some are cautious because of what they've seen in the ER. Others are optimistic because of what they've read in journals. None of that is wrong, but none of it is you. That's why relying on their personal opinion can quietly lead you down a path that doesn't reflect your values, your goals, or your comfort level. Let's pause here and think about that. Because in America, where medical choices often involve complex trade-offs between quality of life side effects, financial cost, and independence, you deserve more than just someone else's shortcut. What's helpful isn't what the doctor would do for themselves. What's helpful is knowing what options are available to you and how they line up with the life you want to live. So next time, instead of asking, what would you do if you were me? Try this. Can you walk me through the options and explain which ones fit best with my medical history, lifestyle, and personal goals? That one shift changes everything. Now the conversation becomes about you, not them, about your story, your values, and your vision for the years ahead. Because here's something that isn't talked about. Enough medicine isn't one size fits all, especially as we get older. The same procedure that helps one person thrive can leave another struggling with side effects. A medication that works for someone active and working full-time might feel exhausting or disruptive to someone who values calm mornings, gardening, or time with grandkids. That's why your input matters more with age, not less. Because by the time we reach our 60s, 70s, or 80s, we've earned the right to choose what kind of life we want to protect, not just what's technically possible. You might want to avoid anything that could risk brain fog, even if it means living with a bit more pain. You might be okay skipping a certain test if it means fewer hospital visits and more time walking your dog in the neighborhood. Or you might want to fight something head-on because you've got trips planned and you're not ready to slow down. Whatever the case, your doctor can't guess that unless you tell them. And they can't support your vision unless you keep yourself at the center of the conversation. So here's a new habit worth building. When decisions come up, take a moment. Ask for the risks, ask for the benefits, ask what the research says for someone your age with your conditions and your preferences, and most importantly, ask for time if you need it. You have every right to say, I want to think this over. Can we follow up in a few days because this is your health, your body, your next chapter? And while doctors are there to guide, only you can choose the direction that truly feels right. I don't really understand, but whatever. There's a moment that happens quietly often in exam rooms across America, from Phoenix to Pittsburgh, from rural Arkansas to downtown Seattle. The doctor finishes speaking, flipping through a chart, typing notes on a screen. They've just explained your diagnosis, your prescription, your next steps. And they look up asking, do you have any questions? And you want to say something. You want to say, I don't really understand that last part, or, wait, what does that medication do? But instead you nod, smile maybe, say, okay, and let it go. Because the visit is almost over. The doctor seems rushed, and you don't want to be difficult. Now take a breath with me, because that single moment, that tiny nod, is far more dangerous than it looks. Not because you're weak, but because your silence can put your health at risk in ways that add up over time. Let's talk about why. When you leave the office not fully understanding what was just said, whether it's how to take a medication, what symptoms to look out for, or why a test was ordered, you're operating without a clear map. And in healthcare, not having a map can mean missing turns that matter. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, nearly 88% of American adults struggle to understand health information when it's presented in complex medical language. And that challenge only grows with age when vision changes, memory slows, and you may be juggling multiple conditions like arthritis, high blood pressure, or diabetes. Now layer that with short appointments, fast-talking doctors, and the pressure to seem polite, and you have a perfect storm. The truth is, a lot of older adults take medications incorrectly, not because they're careless, but because they never got the full picture in the first place. They didn't realize they had to take the pill with food. They didn't know they were supposed to stop if a rash appeared. They thought one pill a day meant morning, but the prescription meant evening. And when something goes wrong, it's often blamed on old age, when really it was just a breakdown in communication. So what can we do about it? It starts with changing how we respond when we don't fully understand. Instead of quietly nodding, try saying, I didn't quite catch that. Can you explain it again? Maybe a little slower. Or could you write that down for me so I don't forget? Or even, would you mind using simpler terms? You're not being rude. You're being responsible. You're protecting your body, your safety, and your independence. And that's one of the most respectful things you can do for both yourself and your doctor. Because here's something that may surprise you. Most doctors actually appreciate it when patients ask for clarification. It tells them you're engaged. It shows you're taking your health seriously. And it reduces the chance of mistakes that lead to ER visits, hospital stays, or complications that were entirely avoidable. Let me tell you about Elaine, a 73-year-old woman from North Carolina. She once nodded through a whole appointment because she was afraid of sounding dumb. She went home, took her medication on the wrong schedule, and ended up dizzy, dehydrated, and scared. Now, she never leaves a visit without asking, can you explain it back to me one more time just to be sure? And her health and confidence have never been better. That's the power of a small shift. So if you're sitting in a room in Florida or waiting for results in a clinic in Oregon and you feel unsure, say something. If you don't understand after the first explanation, ask again. And if you still don't understand, ask again. Because this isn't a pop quiz. This is your body, your future, your life. And your voice is not just welcome in the room, it's necessary. Don't just nod for the sake of politeness. Speak up for the sake of wellness. Because you deserve care you understand and confidence you can carry home. So today we talked about something simple but powerful, that your voice matters, especially when it comes to your health. Asking the right questions can change the kind of care you receive and remind your doctor that you still have goal strength and so much life ahead. Remember, these tips are shared for general awareness. If you're facing any specific health conditions or symptoms, be sure to talk directly with your doctor before trying anything new. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What part of this video spoke to you most? Was there a line or lesson that made you pause and reflect? Leave your thoughts in the comments or just type the word hope if that's what you're carrying with you today. And if this video helped you in any way, don't forget to subscribe, tap the notification bell, and share it with a friend or loved one who might need it too. You're never too old to be heard to heal or to begin again. Wherever you are, I'm sending you peace, strength, and a little extra light for the road ahead. Take good care, and I'll see you next time.